The healthcare war is on again, just 2 months after Republican efforts to repeal and replace Obamacare failed. Vermont Senator Bernie Sanders rolled out a new version of his massive and ambitious single-payer healthcare plan today called Medicare for All. Say goodbye to insurance companies and hello to the government paying all the bills. And earlier, Republican senators led by Lindsey Graham pushed an opposing plan to give Affordable Care Act funding directly to the states. President Trump immediately endorsed that idea. Here are the lead players one more time today.
From my point of view, it's the best and last hope for the Republican Party to show that we have ideas and that our ideas are better than our friends on the other side.
To my Republican colleagues, please don't lecture us on health care. You, the Republican Party, have no credibility on the issue of health care.
At the moment, neither plan appears to be on a fast track. Several powerful Democrats are already saying they won't endorse the Sanders single-payer proposal, and it's not clear there are enough votes to support Graham's plan either. Joining me to discuss all this are Jennifer Nassour. Jennifer's former head of the Massachusetts Republican Party. Hi, Jennifer.
Hello,
good to see you. Farrah Stockman, a reporter for the New York Times. Hey, Farrah.
Hey.
And Phil Johnston, who's former head of the state's Democratic Party, who supported Senator Sanders during the primary, even though he used to work for Bill Clinton. Nice to see you, Phil. Can I start with you? You're a Bernie guy, as I said a minute ago. Is America ready for a government-run Medicare for All program, even if you think it's brilliant on the merits?
Well, I think what Bernie's doing here is what he's done throughout his career, which is to push the envelope, set the gold standard for where we should be, and with the main principle in this case being that health care is or should be a right for every American.
So the answer is no.
I don't think anybody expects this is going to pass anytime soon, certainly not while Trump is in the White House and the Republicans control the House and the Senate. What he's doing, though, is transforming or setting the agenda for the Democratic Party, and that's a big deal.
Let me build on that, Jennifer. Americans love to hate insurance companies, and they love to love Medicare. This accomplishes both those ends. So is there not, I mean, the polls are higher, 10, 12 points higher in favor of this than they were as recently as 3 or 4 years ago. So there is some modest momentum building, no?
So I don't think so. And I agree with Phil. It's not going to go anywhere. And it's not just because it's a Republican-controlled Congress. It's because even Nancy Pelosi came out and said, hold on a second. What we need to do first is fix the ACA before we even talk about single payer. So I would say that Congress is not, as a whole body, is not ready yet to implement something like that.
Yeah,
so forget about the American
Senator
people.
Max Baucus, when he was in charge of this whole thing during the Affordable Care Act creation, wouldn't even allow a public option. Now he supports single payer. People evolve pretty quickly.
Well, I mean, I think that also depends on who your electorate is, right? And I think after the 2016 election, what you see is that the parties are so pulled to either side that the liberal base is pulling the Democratic Party over to the left, and that's what they're appealing to.
You know, there's one, I think this guy was a Republican, I'm not sure, but there's one Republican who I think actually endorsed government involvement in the healthcare system. Here he is.
I am going to take care of everybody. I don't care if it costs me votes or not. Who pays for it? The government's going to pay for it, but we're going to save so much money on the other side.
He became president, didn't he?
So Donald Trump didn't start out as a real Republican to begin with. He was actually a Democrat, and he became a Republican as he thought he saw the light or opportunity.
Okay, fine.
Loosely.
So I was going to say settle the score, but even the Sanders supporter says there's maybe a shelf life, but it's not an immediate thing. This does create an opening for Democrats to actually rally around something, doesn't it?
I mean, I don't. You look at the demonization of Obama. For people demonized Obama as a communist for the ACA. Okay, so maybe now there's this light bulb moment of, well, you know, why not go whole hog? If you're gonna call me a communist for what was by every stretch of the imagination a compromise, you know, idea.
Let me live up to your.
I don't know. I'm just.
But this is a very different kettle of fish than the Affordable Care Act. Affordable Care Act depends on private insurance companies, all that sort of stuff.
Sure, that was the compromise right there. That is the compromise between those two extremes. And if we're not, there's a deadline, by the way. Congress has to fix something by September 20th, right? They have to organize to say that they're going to pay the
because of these subsidies and all this sort of stuff. Yeah.
Yes. So I think that should be what Congress is doing right now.
You know, it seems to me, even if he starts the debate, the problem is, to me at least, is very much like the problem Republicans face with the repeal and replace. Concept is sort of an attractive one until you have to start filling in the blanks. You know, so when you voted to repeal it 190 times or whatever the Republicans did, it was a conceptual repeal. When they filled in the blanks, no one liked it. Isn't that the same problem?
Well,
how do Democrats ever say, by the way, we're going to have a huge increase in your taxes, but don't worry because we're going to cut your insurance
premiums? Well, they're going to have a huge increase in taxes, but they're not going to pay any premiums. And what's happened is the premiums are going up significantly, but what are really going up are copays and deductibles. I have a guy who works for me, 31 years old, a 1-year-old child, and a wife. It costs me $30,000 a year as a small business person to pay for him. With a $1,000 deductible, which is a very progressive policy compared to what else is out there in the market.
Well, that's like the problem where the good news, you have health insurance, the bad news, you can't afford to use it.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
And by the way, I should say you were the former head of Health and Human Services, both for Dukakis and regionally for Bill Clinton. Is this going to be a defining issue for, I mean, they are lining up from Elizabeth Warren to Cory Booker to Senator Gillibrand from New York. The front runners, whatever that means for the Democratic nomination in 2020, virtually everyone, either because they believe in it or they're scared not to support it, are signing up on the Sanders thing.
I think it's interesting. I mean, this is one silver lining of the Trump presidency is that it has exploded our idea of what is possible. If Donald Trump can be president, then anything is possible. Then single payer is possible. I mean, I'm serious. I think people are
I don't know. I think people being elected to office is a little bit different than setting policy that's affecting millions of people. And so, yes, Donald Trump became president. I don't think anything is possible. I think that, you know, you're not going to see any significant changes in Congress in 2018. You might not see
it. Well, you
may
in the House of Representatives. We don't know that. Maybe not in the Senate.
Maybe not. I don't really think it's not going to change. It's not going to go into Democratic control. I mean, maybe you lose a couple of people, but I don't even think that there's so much angst. If the economy stays good, I think people always vote with their wallets. And if you're someplace where you're working and unemployment is low and everyone is doing okay, I don't think that you then say, I'm not going to re-elect that person.
This is a fight within the party, within the Democratic Party. And what he's saying is that, and by the way, in his case,
Sanders?
Bernie, in his case, it isn't just health care, it's affordable education, it's protection of the environment, and so on. His agenda is just simply an extension of the New Deal, the fear
Didn't
deal.
Get him the nomination. The new deal.
Well, we could relitigate that, but he did pretty damn well when you consider.
I was just saying, you were saying if the economy is going well, why, you know, that's not true for a lot of America. And a lot of the people that voted for Trump live in places where the only job that exists is at a hospital or school. I mean, there are parts of America where their economic prospects are really bad. And they spoke out when they were facing the idea of a repeal of health care, not just because their health care was going away, but their jobs.
But there's a difference between the repeal of health care and changing it into a single-payer health care system.
Can we move to the Republican side of this Lindsey Graham thing today? Essentially what he does is get rid of the mandates, get rid of the subsidies without giving you a headache out there, and send block grants, send sums of money to the states. This is just, I think somebody today called it a Hail Mary. This has no chance, any better chance than anything else.
No, it doesn't have a chance at all. And I think, you know, when you see someone like Governor Baker who goes down to D.C. and sits on a panel of 5 other governors and has conversations on, you know, market stability for everyone, right, and making sure that people are covered and making sure that the states are able to sustain any changes in the healthcare system, you know, I think that those are real conversations that need to be had, and that a lot of these senators and members of Congress need to get out of their own way, leave their little bubbles, and actually talk to governors.
So what are you saying? So if the Republican plan has no chance, and at least in the short term, single payer has no chance, what happens in the short term when they actually have to keep funding, as you say, these subsidies and things like that?
Well, that's what I'm saying. I think that the hard work that Congress is going to have to do is how do you stabilize the system in the short term? How do you do some deals to give states flexibility in exchange for continuing these payments until for a couple of years until you can at least then figure out where you're going to go. But I will say about block grants, we have seen this movie before. I mean, that was
Reagan.
welfare reform. Welfare
reform,
reform, cash payments are a block grant now to states. We have it happened.
You don't think some desperate governors who otherwise wouldn't buy this say, well, if you give me the money, it's surely not my first choice. I'll take it better than the potential alternative?
I think some governors like the idea of getting a chunk of money that they can, a lot of states take that chunk of money from the federal government that they are supposed to be using as cash payments for the poor, and they pocket it. So, there's something attractive about that.
And that's nerve-wracking. That's nerve-wracking because if you give someone money and you're a Republican governor and say, okay, that's great, I'm going to take it, and then the next administration is a Democratic one, and then they're redistributing it to do something you don't want to do with it, I think it ends up being
very
dangerous.
badly hurt in block grants.
We got to go. Jennifer DeSoto, former chair of the state Republican Party.
Good seeing you.
Hey,
Kara
great
Stockman
to
from
see
the
you.
failing New York Times. Is that correct? I just want to be clear. Phil Johnson,
Jim,
former
always good
Democratic
to see
chair
you.
of Massachusetts.